Hello and welcome to Secrets Mystery Manor. I'm your host, Psychic Zelda Kelly. Warning: this podcast may contain sensitive material. It is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer and listening discretion is advised. Hello and welcome, my friends. We are back with another episode of Secrets Mystery Manor. Welcome. I think I said that already. I've missed you. How are you? Well, I have a really good episode for you today. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the farm that my family and I lived on, and this was quite a few years ago in, I'm going to say, mid to northern Ohio. I can't give you the address because there are people living there right now, and for their privacy's sake, I would really like to respect that. So, here's a little history of my farm. I'm going to call it my farm, okay? I'm going to claim it. Here's a little history. We moved there right after I was in the 6th grade. So I was entering into junior high. My sister was entering into high school. This farm is rich in history. The barn said when we moved in, of course, things have been replaced now. And I'm going to put some pictures down here so you can see these, because I think that this is really, really interesting. This farmhouse is now over 100 years old and counting. I think it's more like, I don't know, maybe closer to 130. So, of course, the windows and the doors have been replaced and the barn roof. But when we moved in, the barn roof was shingled, and a particular shingle that read Harper 1867. Now, the Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865, and this barn was built in 1867, but the house was built before that. Now, there is still standing, well, it was when I was there. In 2017, I drove by to visit and take pictures, and I was visiting my father's grave at the time. So there's a log cabin to the side of the house, and that was the original home, and it's very small. I mean, it's like one room. Still standing, the floor was out of it, not, it's not inhabitable, believe me. We used it for chickens even back then, and it's still standing today. So, that was the original cabin while they built the house. The house has 14 rooms. Now, it looks smaller on the inside, but I can tell you on the top floor, the rooms on the back side of the house were very small, and they were for their servants or their workers. I don't like to say servants, for their workers at the time. And it had a back staircase that came up out of the kitchen, and then there was a main beautiful stairway that came from the front door and went upstairs. So it was really a beautiful home on the inside. And when we moved in, my mother decorated it in period decor. It was beautiful. And a lot of our people that we knew from church in the surrounding area would come and visit as a Christmas, because my mother would basically decorate it. It was just gorgeous. I can't even tell you. It was something that deserved to be on Pinterest. But as the time goes on and years go behind us, the farm doesn't really look like it did when we moved in. And with a lot of the replacements, it doesn't look the same. But it's still my farm. and I still love it. So, without further ado, the things that started happening in the farm after we moved in were very subtle at first. And I think in some ways we were being a little tested. I think the activity in the home wanted to just take the temperature of how much we believed. My dad never believed in this. He rarely saw anything. There was one instance that he experienced on the farm. We'll get to that. But as we go further, you'll see that as time went on, the activity really ramped up. And it started with us sitting in the living room right after we moved in one night. We were watching TV all together as a family, and the bedroom that my sister and I shared had a door that entered into the living room. And there was another door in the back of the same bedroom that went out into the main hall by the big staircase and the front door. We kept that door always open, but the door that went into the living room, we closed when we were in there. So, we were watching TV. All of a sudden, we hear this noise in the door, and you could literally see the door knob turning. Now, these were ceramic knobs on these doors, so a lot of times they would be marked, or you could see them, or it was very obvious, let me say. And it was clicking as if someone was turning the doorknob. I mean, we sat there frozen. My dad didn't say anything. I don't know if he passed it off or what it is that he thought. But we just looked at each other and that was it. And of course that night when we were in bed, we never slept with the doors closed because we had a wood-burning stove in the living room, and that wood-burning stove kept the whole downstairs nice and toasty, and especially if we left the doors open. But at night, many times we could hear those doorknobs turn. And some nights, our bedroom door, my sister's bedroom and myself, the door going in toward the living room would close. Easy. Not anything slam, just a little bit at a time. Just easy. And over time it would end up closing. And we would open the door. We wouldn't think a thing about it because we would think that the other one had closed the door, and we just didn't think anything. We closed the door, obviously, to get dressed, so we just didn't think anything about it. So my mother really was the first one after our school year started that was experiencing a lot of the activity. Things like clock stopping that were not wind-up clocks, but the plug-in clocks. When my sister and I would get on the bus to go to school, it would stop at the time that my sister and I got on the bus. So if we got on at 7:45, it stopped at 7:45, or at 7:37, or whatever the case may be, it stopped at that time. And my mother would have to unplug the clock and then plug it back in. So that went on for a little while, and always during the school year. It didn't matter for as long. We were there for 3.5 years. So for that entire time during the school year, every day, the clock did that. Now in the summer, it did not. Also, off the kitchen, there was a pantry room that had the water pump. The pump was still there. It was disconnected from the well years ago, and city water had been put into the farm and services and so forth, so we no longer needed the well water. So they disconnected that. But it was very pretty. I mean, very farm country. My mother had a very decorative planter in that room with some straw flowers, and every morning a particular blue and yellow straw flower would be laying on the side on the counter. Now, I say every morning, maybe a few times a week, randomly. Now, if you know straw flowers, if you touch them, they're very delicate, and they all just kind of fall out together, or they spill, or they look real. It takes a craft to really pick out two and put them on the counter. Now, they were in all colors, like blue, red, yellow, green, orange. But there was this particular two, the blue and the yellow, or a blue and a red, or a blue and a green. I don't know if it had any significance or not, but okay, so that started. We didn't really think that much about it. But off the kitchen was the basement door. Down in the basement, I call it a basement. I'm going to tell you, it was a dirt, creepy cellar. And we had to do our laundry down there. And there was only one light, and it was at the bottom of the stairs. And it had the chain. So you had to actually go down the stairs, and the washer and dryer was right at the bottom there in the stairs on the side. So you could see it when you opened, because there were windows in the, very small windows, but you could see enough to go down in the basement. So my mother would go down, and she would do the laundry. But she would get down to the bottom of the step, and you'd have to reach up and pull this little chain, and it would go click, click. I know you know the type that I'm talking about, right? I know that. Well, my mother would be standing there sorting laundry, and she would hear the bulb kind of unscrew. That's no joke. And she would reach up and screw it back in, and the light would come back on. Well, this would happen a couple of times. So she would go back upstairs, laundry would be done, she'd go downstairs, turn the light on, unscrew. So it messed with her a lot. And she didn't really think, we weren't thinking that we were experiencing a haunting. So when you're not thinking that in that way, and of course, obviously back then, there was no internet, no cell phones, no anything. So it wasn't anything that you could just say, wow, I'm experiencing this. What do I do? So finally, it went on to the point where it was just disturbing. So then she started hearing noises in the back of the basement. I'm telling you, bless my mother. She was brave in some instances. In other instances, she was very emotional. But in this, she was brave. And finally, the light went off, and she heard a noise in the back of the basement. Well, it didn't scare her. She got mad and said, all right, I'm done. Stop this. Stop it right now. And that light bulb came on, and there was nothing that she ever heard again. So obviously it was some poltergeists and little, messing with her type stuff. Now my mom was there alone every day. My dad would go to work, and my sister and I would go to school and come home, and we had our daily chores, and of course mom was a housewife. And she was a domestic engineer, believe me. And I got to tell you, my mama had the best garden there ever. We had fresh vegetables all the time. She even planted a few fruit trees. We didn't get too much off of that, but boy, we had some elderberry bushes, and we made the best elderberry pies and jams, and wow. And just a little side trip. I got to take the side trips during these, right? I have to. My mama would make all the butter. She baked all our bread. She made our ketchup. She made mayonnaise. She made the biscuits. She made candy. She made everything. Plus, she would can and freeze and put up vegetables. That means canned vegetables. And all that. So during my younger years, and that wasn't only at the farm, that was everywhere that we were. My mom really, she had chickens, so we had fresh eggs. We had the garden. Really all we had to do was, buy our other necessities at the store, and that was it. My mom took care of it all. And sometimes I wonder, why don't we do that now, right? Okay, so back to the stories. Now my mom is the domestic goddess and engineer of this place. So As time went on, Mama had a mirror above the sofa. And above the sofa, we would be in the living room at night. We'd watch TV, and we'd see someone walk in front of the mirror. And then we would see a mist. And then one night we would see maybe just a head walk past. And it wouldn't be too slow. It would be quickly, but it would be enough that we could recognize. Now, we were sitting right there. So it had to be walking right in front of all of us. And we would see this randomly. So now all these things started happening. We'd see the doorknobs. We'd see this. We'd see that. Then you could see down, there was a hallway off the living room as well. At the end of the hallway was the front door, and then the big staircase that went up. And of course, around the corner was the other door into our bedroom. But then there was the bathroom and my parents' room on the left-hand side. If you walked past and you looked down and you glanced down, you could see the arm of someone standing at the front door. Now, we always thought it was a soldier because you could see, it looked like the coat of a uniform, and it had a little bit of detail on it, and you could see a hand, but that's all you could see. Just faintly, boom. You could see it, and you looked at it for a few seconds, and then it would be gone. So then things started traveling where my mom would see a mist or someone walking down the hall at night. She would leave a hall light on because when it got dark on that farm, in that farmhouse, it got dark. And so she would leave the hall light on so we could get up and go to the bathroom if we needed to, or whatever the case may be. And she would see someone walk down that hall. One night, it not only walked, it stood in front of the door and then just rushed her, came right in, and it hit her to the point where she actually made a noise. She felt it hit her, and it woke my dad up, and she's like, oh my gosh, something just hit me. And of course, they looked around, they came around and looked looked at all of us, and, that was it. So now it's summer. And all these things are randomly happening. And there was a time we were having problems with our plumbing. And the plumber came out. It was a weekend, and my dad started yelling for me, Zell, get down here. So I go down in the creepy basement. And they had moved a bunch of, I'm going to say, utility things. There was a hot water heater next to the furnace and so forth up against the wall where they had to pull out the hot water heater because I think it had burned, element had burned out, something had gone on with that. They pulled that out, and there was a little archway. It was small on the floor from the wall. So I had a flashlight, and my dad said, you need to crawl in there and see what's in there. Now, I'm going to tell you, I didn't think a thing about it. I was tall and skinny then, so I fit through this hole in the wall. And when I got through in the hole in the wall, there was another room. And in this room, there was it was like a slab bench that was in there. And it was small. It was probably not real small, but it was about a 12 by 10 area. And there was a little vent hole that you could see that just gave you just a little bit of light. And taking that flashlight and looking around, there wasn't anything in there, and there wasn't any ability for anybody to write anything on the walls or anything like that. So I came out. That was interesting. We left that open. There were no animals or anything that could get in there. And the next time we visited my great-grandparents, which my great-grandfather, who was in his early 90s at that time, remembered that farm and said how that farm had this huge long driveway and how this 4-lane highway was built and ran through the drive. So there was a little access road that we got to our farm. But he also said something that was very interesting, and that was it was used as an underground railroad. And that room was still to take slaves. I've got to say it, as much as I don't like it. It was used to hide people there while they were moving them from the south and transporting them to Canada. And that's where they would stay. And they had soldiers that had been there. And my great-grandfather said that that was kind of a well-known that, a few soldiers would stay in that house and would stay in the upstairs and would be there as a lookout to see if anybody would be coming where they could tell people to hide. So that was very interesting. And I look back and I think, wow, of course I was young, teenager then, and it's like, I wish I would have known then, right? That's one of those situations where you think, oh my goodness, would that not have been wonderful to go in there and think of all that stuff, and to do EVPs and, all the good stuff that our paranormal crews do, right? So as time goes on, and as soon as we found that room, the activities started ramping up. Now, in junior high, I had heard a young lady from high school, and she was singing opera. We had a program there that we could listen, learn the language, learn the music, and she was quite a few years older than I. And not quite a few years, I'm just saying, she was in high school, I was in junior high. It seemed like she was so much older and wiser then. Anyway, she was a young girl, was in the opera program, and I heard her sing an opera. And I went home and I told my Mom, I need to sing like that. I have never heard anything like that in my life. That is so beautiful. Now, my family was musically inclined. My mother played the piano and the organ, and she played keyboards. I played the drums. I sang. We all sang. My sister played several instruments. My dad drove the bus. We played at churches. We sang. We did the little gig thing. But when I went home and told my mom, she said, okay, let's get some sheet music. Let's do this. Now, I had to be careful because my dad, who was in World War II in Italy, was made to sit through a lot of operas painfully, and he hated it. So I was not allowed to do that. But I could do it at school, and I could do it when he wasn't at home. So you can bet the moment that he would leave in the morning, we would get our chores done. My grandmother, yes, the card reader grandmother, would come over. We would sit. Now, I'm getting to the point here, so bear with me, okay? We would play these little operettas, and we would sing and make this music. And then I was preparing to enter into the opera program because, I kind of wanted to be an opera singer when I got out of school. So, and incidentally, I got a whisper. The little side trip here. The girl that was singing, that I loved, that I thought was so beautiful and sang so beautifully, was having an affair with our band leader. And after she graduated, he killed her. Yes, he killed her. That's another story. And very interesting too. And too close to home. So back to the operettas. We're singing. So my voice coach at the time gave me an album, and we would play it. I would put it on the record player, right, and lift the needle. Wow, I'm dating myself. Zelda, look out, you're dating here. And So my mom would be playing the piano, my grandmother would be there. She would tell me, yes, that sounds good. No, that doesn't sound good. And so I got frustrated one time and lifted the needle up very, very quickly from the album. Now, what we heard was a woman singing in the upstairs, in the upstairs room above us. Now, incidentally, we did not use the upstairs. The upstairs was creepy and dark and had original wallpaper. And as you went toward the back of the house where the workers' rooms were, they were small and even creepier. And even now, it gives me chills to even think about it. But again, it was used as a boarding house. We didn't need it. We had plenty of room on the first floor. So my dad made a makeshift plywood door, and we put that over the opening of the stairway on the top, on the second level, so we could actually see the stairs going up, but we had that. So obviously, and it wasn't heated or cooled, so you would blaze out in the summer and you would freeze out in the winter being up there. Now, we used it for some storage, like for Christmas decorations and that sort of thing. And my mom, we had old toys that my mom couldn't let go and we couldn't get rid of. So we kept those up there too. And that was, my sister and I would go up there and horse around. And that's another big story. So we started experimenting with this record. Now, my sister, granted, and my mom and grandmother were there. And wow, my mom and grandmother and my sister and I all heard this woman singing. Now, did we go upstairs to investigate? No, because we were just kind of paralyzed, standing there listening to a woman sing. Now, it wasn't in a full, song. It was a few notes that it was almost like, oops. It was an oops thing, because I would lift the needle of the record and then she would just keep going. So we heard a few little, notes up there. Now, this was not the wind. It was not anything. And I can tell you, we debunked it because the windows upstairs were not open. They hadn't been opened in years. There was no other explanation. We heard it. It was a woman singing. So with that, I'm going to leave you right now for this very important message. And then we're going to come back and we're going to finish this with 2 great more instances of this farm, my farm, that's been haunted. We'll be right back. Hi everyone, this is your friend Zelda Kelly, and I would like to take a minute to invite you to stop over to Psychic Secrets. That's www.psychicsecrets.com. There you can find an advisor that can help you with advice, direction, and guidance that you need. And also you can read our blog, which has a lot of really, really good little articles and information and can actually answer some questions for you. You can find us here on this same site, this Secrets Mystery Manor. We are there. So you're there already if you found us. But we also have another section, which is the Secrets Laws of Attraction. We have some wonderful videos up, and we would love to have you stop by and take a look at that. Now, I want you to know that Secrets really is here for helping the person. We have qualified, experienced advisors on call 24/7. We have the ability to chat. We have the ability to take a call and actually even a video call if you feel so inclined. So stop on by to psychicsecrets.com. That's www.psychicsecrets. That's 2 S's in the middle now. psychicsecrets.com. And take advantage of our first-time offer. For those of you who have never called before, first-time customer, we have an offering of 30 minutes for $30. We can get a lot accomplished in 30 minutes. I'm so glad that you stopped by today to listen to Secrets Mystery Manor. And I hope you take the invitation to come on over and check out our advisors. We're here for you. So thank you so much. And hopefully I'll see you soon and you'll see me on there. I'm extension 11. So back to our podcast. Bye for now. Thank you and welcome back for that. Thank you for giving us the time for that very important message. So the next story, and I thought about this one while we were on break. I had forgotten about this one, but we had 900 acres and we had 96 Holstein cows. And through the 900 acres, we grew mainly corn, field corn, and we had some soybean and of course hay and a lot of that, so that was, we had a lot of crops. My dad, grandpa, my great-grandfather, the one that gave us the advice, and I did say my grandpa, and myself and my sister were out on the tractors and on the wagons. We were coming up to the house because it was getting lunchtime and we were kind of late. And we had started early, we were all hungry, and then what we were going to do was just knock off for the rest of the day because it was getting hot. As we approached the house, and this is the part that my dad became a believer, as we approached the house, we saw the face of a man in an upstairs window. Now, this isn't the first time that my grandparents or my grandpa had seen a face in a window, and you can hear that in the previous message with the ghost of Malabar Farm, of an experience that my grandparents had there. So we obviously didn't have cell phones back then, and my mother was there alone. Now you can imagine, we put those tractors in high gear and we held on and we flew up to that house. Now my mother was sitting on the porch because it was kind of warm that day and even warmer in the kitchen. And when we went up, my dad and grandpa just flew through the doors. One went up one stairway, one went up the other stairway, and met in the middle and found nothing. Now, that gives me the creeps to even think about that face, because that face was looking right back at us, and it was very clear that it was a man. Of course, obviously, we thought there was a man in the house with my mom. And so that bothered her, and it especially bothered my dad. I mean, at that point, he kind of knew that we weren't making these things up, and we'd all seen it. We all saw it, and that was it. So, now we have all these things going on. We have singing, doorknobs turning, we see a soldier in the hallway, we see this, we see that. And so what started next was really uncanny. And to this day, my sister and I come over this story, and it's still unbelievable to us. My mom, Eve, would check on us nightly. You know how moms are. You want to make sure that your kid's okay. I still did that with my son. I did that with my daughter. I did it with my granddaughter. I do it with all of them. I know that you do too. And so my mom, even though we were in junior high and high school, would come in and check on us. Well, there were a couple of nights that we would see a woman come in our room from the back door area that came from the hall. My mom came through the same door. So we just thought it was her. She would come up, and she was built like my mother and wore her hair kind of up on her head a little bit, like our mother did. So this gives me creeps just telling this. But I love it. Okay? So this woman would come and stand at the foot of our bed and look over us. And if we would move or, whatever, she would just kind of fade out. Well, this would be in the early morning hours. We would not there it would be very hard to really rally, and this would happen all year round, several times a night, and this happened for a long time. So one time, my sister came to me and she said, I don't think that is mom. And I said, why do you think that? Because I had thought that and I didn't want to say anything. So she said, well, it's just too weird. Mom comes in first, and then why would she come in again overnight? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. We tried to explain it. So she said, I'll tell you what, the next time we're laying there and we see it, I'm going to give you the elbow. And you say, hey, Mom, and then we'll see. So it was just maybe a couple of nights later, it happened again. Now you could see, you could see a little bit from the hall light that my mom left, and we had the doors open. And this woman came to the foot of our bed. We had a canopy bed, so it was kind of hard to see a little bit because my mom made the frilly things that, we had all the Holly Hobby stuff. Come on now. Girls, you're with me. So we see this, my sister gives me the elbow, and I said, hey, Mom. And right away, this woman disappeared. And of course, we start screaming, and the covers went up over our head. Our mom came flying into our room and said, what's going on? What's going on? So she just looked at us. We were told her, and she just looked at us in disbelief. And she said, okay, well, don't worry about it, whatever. The next day, now this is in the summer, the next day, Mom says, come on, girls, we're going to go to a ride. We're going to go down and get Grandma. So we go down and we pick up my grandma. Grandma gets in the car, and my mom says, we've got to go to our great-grandma's house. So great-grandma is sitting there, and my mom bursts into tears and starts telling all of these things. I mean, it was how she just felt odd and scared and being watched, and she knew all this was going on, but she was afraid because she just didn't think, or she thought that this was going to continue and make it even worse if she talked about it in the house. So she told us all, and of course there wasn't too much that Mom and Grandma could say, so they told her to go to our pastor, and she did, and he thought we were crazy. And at that time, I started dating his son, which everybody started giving a hard time to, because there's that family, the one that sees the ghost, and we got no help from the church. And so the son and I broke up, which was a good thing. And so we went our own ways, and we remained friends, and that was it. Well, then, so later on in the summer, and incidentally, we would have sleepovers. Our girlfriends would come over. We would have sleepovers, and these girls would see things too, and they would go home and tell their parents, and they would not be allowed to come over again. Now, a couple of them would, and it wouldn't scare them so much. So you get the picture. It was started to become very rough for my sister and I because nobody wanted to believe us. But now here's this is the crescendo of the of this episode. And this was what really did it. And we were really now experiencing a lot of activities, things moving, doors closing, knobs turning, pots and pans would fall in the kitchen, and a plate would fall and crash, and the door would open to the outside, and just stuff, and people, seeing this man's face in the window. And so it was summer again. my sister and I decided to go upstairs where we never went, and we were in the front room. If you look at the pictures, it's the front room as you're facing the house. It's the front upstairs, two windows that was over my parents' room. Our room was on the bottom left. And so we went upstairs in this room. Now, my sister had this favorite cat of hers. We had a lot of cats on the farm, and his name was Jeff, and she named him after this guy she had a crush on in high school. Okay, that happens. So we take Jeff because we knew instinctively that cats and animals were a really, really good barometer to the paranormal. So we took Jeff up with us, and Jeff was a real docile cat, and he was beautiful. So he spent his days grooming himself so he looked really, really handsome. And you know the kitty type. I've got one here. And so we were upstairs, and we were just horsing around, playing restaurant, playing, just doing stuff. And we had a desk that we had used a few years earlier for school. My mom made it really sweet and girly and pretty and put a pink and white gingham, which is pink and white check, beautiful little skirt around it was a kidney-shaped desk, and she did this, and she made some little accessories and so forth, and they were sitting on the desk, and we had a table up there, and we were reading our Archie comics, and we were just drawing and horsing around, and then all of a sudden, Jeff gets up and he starts meowing a little bit, and he starts to pacing back and forth on the floor. And so we didn't know what was going on, and we just, said, "Oh, Jeff, go sit down. It's okay, buddy," this sort of thing. And he just kept looking, switches his head, back and forth. The next thing you know, this little pencil holder falls onto the floor. And my sister and I are looking at each other. And now Jeff is really pacing and meowing. And before you know it, this box, it was a little box that held stationery for when you wanted to write a letter. And that box slid across the desk and smacked very, very hard on the floor. And Jeff went wild. He was howling and meowing, and it was one of these B-movie type screeches that they do with animals, but this was very true. He ran up by the entrance to the room and jumped on the wall and was hanging there by his claws on the wall, looking up at the ceiling and meowing and howling. And my sister just takes off running. Right, she goes right downstairs and leaves me and Jeff. Well, I'm right behind her. I'm running. I grab Jeff, and we're running down the steps. Well, my mom's hearing all this commotion. She goes, "Girls, what's going on up there?" I just heard her say that. I want you to know. "Girls, what's going on up there?" Well, my sister was in tears. We were hysterical. There's Jeff. He still had the wallpaper in his claws from where I grabbed him. Now, it didn't hurt him. He just tore the wallpaper off. And we went downstairs, and we covered that, and we never went up there again. A couple of years later, my parents decided to get divorced, and my sister stayed there with my dad, and I moved away with my mother. Later on, I had seen the pastor's son, and he told me, "I moved into that house after you guys moved out." And he said, "You know how I made fun of you and how I thought this was something that was, you guys were just crazy?" He said, "I moved in and I moved out 3 months later. I couldn't take it. I couldn't stand it." And it made a believer of everyone. And of course, we did not go to that church any longer because parents had gotten divorced and we had moved on and so forth. And my sister graduated high school, and my dad decided to leave the farm, and he moved to another town, and that was it. That was my beautiful farm. And those are the stories. And to this day, I've heard bits and kibbles that there's still some things happening, but I don't know what they are. And I really just love my memories. And even though that was a hard time living in that house, those were really some best years of my life. Great memories. So I wanted to share that with you today, and I want to thank you so much for allowing me to do so. So I invite you to stop back again for another episode of Secrets Mystery Manor. Until then, you be well, be safe, be brave, heart, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye for now. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. I just love this, don't you?